On today's episode of Locked On Mariners, who would be Seattle's new division rivals if Major League Baseball expanded and realigned? And what are the biggest storylines we're tracking in spring training? We'll answer that and more here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Monday, February 13th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description below. Pitchers and catchers have officially reported. We're back to 5 shows a week, and we're going to kick things off with Mailbag Monday, the show where we answer your Mariners questions. But before we get into those questions, Colby, I believe you have something to announce. Is that correct?
Sure. We're doing a giveaway to celebrate the fact that we're back to 5 shows a week, despite there not being any meaningful baseball games for at least another month. But yay, that's fun. So yeah, I'm going to give away a card here. The way to enter is pretty simple. All you need to do is you need to subscribe to the channel, the YouTube channel, and you need to leave a comment down below of any of the videos this week, Monday through Thursday. I will pick a random video, and then I will have there's a tool I can use to pick a random comment from that video. So just make sure you're subscribed and that you leave a comment down below of any of the videos this week. We'll pick the winner a week from today, let's say, next Monday. We'll pick the winner. I'm going to give you guys, because we had some issues with this last time, I'll give you guys 2 days to claim your prize, and then if not, we'll just pick somebody else. So yeah, you have a week. You have the next 5 days to enter. Again, just make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment down below, and you'll be entered to win one of these cards. And I say one of these cards because we don't know which one it is, because Ty is going to try and break my heart. I have 8 cards here that I am willing to give away. Ty is going to pick a number between 1 through 8, and that will be the card that we give away this week. So
can you show which ones it could be real quick? No. All right, we're keeping it,
because I've already had them shuffled.
All right, we're keeping it all.
I'll say this: some cards include a Cal Raleigh, Jared Kelenic, Mike Cameron. I think you guys have seen all these cards before. There's a Colton Wong card in here. Yeah, and a handful of others. So, Ty, since we don't have all day, please pick a number 1 through 8.
All right. I thought we were doing this like once we were ready to pick the winner, but all right, let's go for it now.
Let's do it now.
Let's go with 4 for Jose Lopez.
All right, so Ty passed up the Colton Wong card.
Oh.
Mike Cameron.
Ah.
The Jared Kelenic, and you son of a gun.
Oh.
The 4th card in the stack is my beloved Walter Ford.
Oh, the Vanilla Missile. Let's go, baby.
The Vanilla Missile.
Let's go.
Make sure you guys subscribe, leave a comment down below. I don't really care what the comment is. But if you think you're going to call me names and win this card, you're sadly mistaken. So, maybe some flattery will get you somewhere, but it really won't.
Some flattery. Speaking of the comments, I saw some of you were complaining about Colby's mic being too loud on the last few episodes. That's mostly because a certain someone may have spilled a liquid onto his other laptop that he typically records on and broke it. So he's on this other laptop, which blows out his mic quite a bit. I've been trying to turn it down here on Restream. So hopefully it's not too bad for you guys, but I believe you've ordered another laptop and that's coming within a couple days, right?
Hopefully by Friday's show, maybe Thursday, but we'll see.
Yeah, so hoping that the audio's fixed. It sounds fine on my end, and we've tested it a little bit here, and it seems fine, but if it's still a little bit of an issue and not super balanced out, it's just I kind of have to live produce this thing, and if I have to go in and edit the whole thing, it's going to take an extra hour or so for you guys to get this episode in your hands. So yeah, just trying to do this kind of on the spot. Also, real quick before we get into our questions finally, I just want to give a quick shout out to Dan Morse, who has been hired by the Seattle Mariners as a baseball analytics intern. This is really cool because Dan is a big part of Seattle sports Twitter. He's of course the creator of the Would It Dong bot, which shows you if a batted ball would have been a home run and which stadiums it would have been a home run in. Very popular bot that unfortunately can now not be used on Twitter because of certain someone that runs Twitter now and has just completely derailed that whole thing. That's a whole other conversation. And he's also, or he was at least, the editor-in-chief over at Davy Jones' Locker Room, which is the SB Nation blog for the Kraken. So you guys probably know who Dan is, even if you don't know exactly who Dan is, but this is a really cool opportunity for Dan. So congratulations to Dan. Really cool to see. All right, let's get into these questions finally, starting with Max. This was kind of a big topic on Twitter last week. Jim Bowden did a mock realignment of Major League Baseball if they expanded to 32 teams. And so Max wants to dive into that a little bit deeper here with us. He starts here by asking, well, I think there were some issues with Jim Bowden's geographic realignment. I like the idea of changing the divisions a little. If you guys were in charge with Nashville and Vegas as expansion teams, what would be your divisions, or at least who's in Seattle's division? So this one's interesting because, like, all right, so I assume that it would be 4 divisions per league, like how the NFL operates with 32 teams. So with that, I mean, there's 2 teams that stand out automatically to join Seattle in what I would assume would be a Pacific or a Northwestern division, essentially. That would be the A's and the Giants. But after that, it gets a little bit difficult here because, you know, you look at the 2 LA teams. That's kind of where I start here, is the 2 LA teams, or well, the Anaheim and, and LA teams. But with one of those, it's like you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because it's like, if I pick the Angels, well, why not the Dodgers? And if I pick the Dodgers, well, why not the Angels? And so on and so forth. And then there's teams like the Rockies and Padres, etc. But I think I would go Angels here for their other division rival, essentially, in whatever division that is. And then the Southwestern division, I guess, would be LA, San Diego, Colorado, Vegas, or Arizona. Probably would have to be Arizona, but yeah. What do you think?
I think for me, it's Seattle. I don't want to break up the Dodgers and the Giants. I know that they would still play each other quite a bit, but I like those 2 being in the same division. So I think for me, I would actually do Seattle, Oakland, and then probably Colorado and Vegas, and then kind of leave the California teams in their own division. So San Francisco, LA, the Angels, and the Padres, I think is kind of how I would work that. And then, you know, Arizona, Houston, Texas, they're kind of the South teams, Nashville, I guess, maybe in there. But I think it's interesting because obviously if your Seattle, priority would be, let's cut down on the travel a little bit here.
Yeah.
So instead of having to go to Texas, 12 times a year now with the new realignment, now the farthest we go in division is Vegas or Colorado. I think that's probably the right way to go.
Yeah, well, I guess in this instance, Vegas would be an expansion team. It wouldn't be Oakland,
right? In the hypothetical proposed,
in the hypothetical proposed. I don't think those 2 things would coexist, though, in the real world. So yeah, and also the other conversation that has to be had here is, do the American League and National League still exist, or is it more of like a Western Conference, Eastern Conference?
It's probably more Western Conference, Eastern Conference, yeah.
Yeah, so then geography plays a really key role in that. And so, yeah, like let's go from a more realistic standpoint then with this and go, you know, Oakland moves to Vegas. You add 2 teams. I don't know. Where do you want to add the 2 teams? Nashville and Montreal?
Sure. It's kind of a bummer that they're both on the east side, but what are you going to do? There's not a ton of west side locations that make sense if we're taking Oakland to Vegas, which I don't think they should, but I think it's likely going to happen.
So Seattle, Anaheim. Vegas, Colorado.
At that point, I think I'd probably still have to do I'd have to do San Francisco then, because I think Seattle and the Bay Area are kind of natural geographic rivals. So
Yeah.
I want that to be part of the division. So I still think that Seattle and the Bay Area are going to be in the same division. It's just a matter of which Bay Area team. And if Oakland's not really an option, then it'd probably have to be San Francisco.
Yeah. I think San Francisco has to be included there. But then again, the problem that you mentioned there is that you essentially lose the Giants-Dodgers rivalry. Yeah, they're still going to see each other like 3 times a year, but that's not enough for those fan bases and just for the baseball world in general. And honestly, Major League Baseball, right? That's less marketing and, all that stuff. So
on the plus side, though, they would get more Yankees-Mets. They would get the same number of, I would assume, the same number of Yankees-Red Sox. They'd get more White Sox-Cubs. So,
right.
Because obviously those teams are going to be in the same division. Like the Northeast division is probably what, Red Sox, Yankees, Mets, Phillies, probably something like that. And then you have like the Metro division, which will be Baltimore, Nashville, Washington, Cincinnati, Cleveland,
Pittsburgh,
Atlanta. Oh, Pittsburgh's in the central or in the Northeast.
Yeah.
So yeah. Montreal. I forgot about Montreal would be in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Which is weird because they'd be in the Northeast, but then I guess the Blue Jays would probably be in the North, and that would be like Minnesota, Cleveland, Detroit, and Toronto, something like that.
I mean, Montreal's more Eastern, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unless baseball want to do like the Southwest division is like Vegas, Colorado, Arizona, San Diego. I guess that would make some sense in the Southwest division.
I don't know. Yeah.
But then it's Texas, Houston, kind of in the getting left out. So I think for me, Seattle, one of the Bay Area teams, and if there's only San Francisco left and it's just San Francisco, Seattle, the Bay Area team, Colorado, and Vegas, I think is probably the way I would align it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think there's going to be a perfect answer whenever they do expand and ultimately realign. Like, just some teams are going to seem out of place in their respective divisions.
The Indianapolis Colts play in the AFC South.
Yeah.
Indianapolis. Sometimes it's just a name.
Yeah. And even in the NBA, there's a couple teams where it's like, they should be in the Eastern Conference, not the Western Conference.
Are the Thunder still in the Pacific Conference or whatever? The Northwest or whatever?
The Northwest, they're in the Northwestern division.
So,
but divisions in the NBA don't even matter at this point. Like, it's just
right.
Get rid of them.
they matter less, or they're mattering less in Major League Baseball than they have in the past.
Yeah.
If there's only 4 teams in each division, and you're playing everybody regardless. So well, whatever.
Yeah. And then you just have 2 wild card teams, which is you're looking at essentially the old NFL format of 3 or so years ago. All right, we got plenty more questions to come in just a moment. We're going to be talking a bit about this current Mariners team, talking about some spring training stuff, all that in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder: this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use, and then you can bet on everything, including the Nets as 2.5-point underdogs against the Knicks tonight. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's LOCKEDON to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Let's get back into these questions here on Mailbag Monday. Ham Swaggerty 69 on Twitter asks, besides spots 1 and 5 in the rotation, how would you guys personally set it up? I would think Kirby, Ray, Gilbert. From a handedness standpoint, and we know that Scott Service is going to favor handedness somewhat, at least. Robbie Ray probably is the number 3 in this rotation, even though that he should be the number 4. I would personally set it up as Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert, Ray, Marco, or Flexen. But I think what it's going to end up being, at least I would hope, just kind of staying in the in the world of realism here a little bit. Castillo, Kirby, Ray, Gilbert, Marco, or Flexen. But maybe Gilbert goes number 2 and Kirby's number 4, which I think would be a massive mistake. But yeah.
I don't care.
Mm.
I don't. I really don't. Castillo's 1, Marco's 5. Put the other 3 in whatever order you want. I wouldn't be shocked if Ray was the 2, just because he's the vet. And that's kind of how they like to do things sometimes. So, you know what? I hope it's Ray too, just because it'll tick off a lot of you guys. Castillo starts game 1. Robbie Ray starts game 2. You know what? Put Kirby in the 5 spot. I don't care. Don't put Kirby in the 5 spot though. That would be dumb. But I really don't care about what the rotation is. I like, as long as there's 5 good pitchers in it, and there's certainly 4. I'll say that. So that's pretty good. And then we'll see what happens with the 5th spot. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all if it was Ray in the 2. I think I would order it. I think I would probably order it Castillo, Kirby, Ray, Gilbert, just because, again, Service likes to break up the lefties traditionally. So, but we'll see. I could easily see it going Castillo, Ray, Gilbert, Kirby, Marco. That wouldn't shock me at all.
Next question comes from Daisy and the Dingo. Is there a conceivable world where Bryce Miller and Emerson Hancock have good seasons this year and the Mariners float Logan Gilbert in trade talks after this coming season for a big bat? Why is it automatically Gilbert? Why wouldn't it be Bryce Miller or Emerson Hancock? That said, though, I don't think that unless injuries just pile up, knock on wood here, that at least one of those guys is going to get enough of an opportunity to have what I would assume you would classify as a good season. I think Bryce Miller is going to have ample opportunity at some point, just even if all that happens is that he just replaces Marco or Flexen in the rotation, and no other injuries occur. Hancock, though, like Hancock's got to prove that he can get value out of his fastball. He's got to prove that, you know, his secondaries are working properly, and like he can get guys out and he can miss bats efficiently. Like he has quite a ways to go before he even factors into the conversation of being involved in the rotation, because right now Taylor Dollard's likely ahead of him. Whoever loses that number 5 spot is ahead of him, as long as they stay within the organization. And, you know, hell, if they don't think that he's ready at a point, maybe they go Tommy Malone for a spot start. Someone like that, you know. So
Brian Wu.
Or Brian Wu. Yeah, maybe Brian Wu is ahead of Emerson Hancock at this point in their eyes.
They try Perlander Baroa. I don't know. So
Right.
The answer to the question is no, because you still need Gilbert in addition to those guys popping, because you're not replacing Gilbert in the rotation, you're replacing Marco. So if Miller pops and Hancock pop, then your rotation is Marco's out, and then probably Hancock is the odd man out. But Hancock has 6 years of club control still at this point, and he's going to be making the league minimum essentially for 3 years. That's an incredibly lucrative trade chip, and you can get a lot more for him than you can Marco, who would at that point would only have 1 year left on his deal. You could just kind of eat that money if you have to. So, no,
Right.
I would be shocked if the Mariners traded Logan Gilbert before 2026. You know, maybe when he has 2 years left of club control, they would consider it. But no, right now he's pre-arb, he's cooking, and they haven't even hit his ceiling yet. So like if Gilbert goes out and he puts up the kind of numbers he did this last year in 2023, you're probably not selling as high as you possibly can on Gilbert either, because there's still more in the tank for Logan Gilbert. So no, I would be shocked if they traded Gilbert or Kirby really before they hit free agency. I'd be pretty surprised, regardless of what happens below them in the minors.
Wifsky asks, going a little deeper this time, how should the Seattle Mariners aim to improve from an operational strategy and coaching perspective this year? I would like to see more aggressiveness, urgency, and essentially everything that they do. That can be a lot of different stuff. Some examples would be aggressiveness on the base pass. They have guys that are better equipped to do that than they did last year. I don't think that they're going to steal a lot of bags still, but they got more athletic this offseason, and they got guys that are notorious for running the bases pretty well. So it's stuff like, instead of just cruising into second, maybe push it for that extra base and get to third, stuff like that. Maybe even some more aggressiveness earlier on in counts, aggressiveness in terms of bullpen management, especially having a quick hook on guys earlier on in the season. But the biggest one for me when I say aggressiveness and urgency is really, if Jared Kelenich's struggling and he's not hitting, and there really aren't any signs that suggest a turnaround is imminent, you don't wait it out for a month and a half. You yank him after a couple weeks, and that's just what it is. And then you go on to the next guy. You put in your next player.
Next guy's kind of hard to find in May, though. Because next guy's like Trammell or Marlowe.
Well, that's the thing, right? And then you just see if you have something there in Trammell, and if you don't have something in Trammell, then you go to Marlowe, and then if you don't have something in Marlowe, then you got to figure something else out.
It's kind of tough though, because you don't want to pull the trigger too fast on that. Sure. Because the ideal situation in that case is that one of those guys you have is the guy, because then you don't have to go out and get that guy.
Right.
So that's absolutely ideal. So you want to give them enough time to prove that it's not them, essentially. And I don't know what that time is. It 3 weeks? Is it a month? But yeah, obviously that's a big one that we're probably going to talk about until one of them actually hits. So that's probably going to be a huge topic of conversation all year for us. I can't say anything about the coaching and the deployment of like bullpen arms, because I don't have all the information they have. They know,
right?
They have more data than we do. They also have, better ideas of guys' health and who needs a day off and who really should be pitching today and blah, blah, blah. The one thing I would say operationally in terms of like baseball ops, I would like to see Jerry and Justin not ignore rentals at all costs, because
very, very good one. Yeah.
Yeah. When we get into July, Jerry has shown zero interest in trading anybody that we would describe as like a real prospect for 3 months of a guy, which I get, I really do. But sometimes you have to pull the trigger on that because it makes you a better team and it helps you advance further in the playoffs. Now, this is not a great example, but like Brandon Drury, right? This last year, by all accounts, the Mariners were not interested in Drury. And maybe they just don't like the player. And considering they weren't in on him in free agency at all, that seems likely. They just didn't like the player, which is fine.
I've been told a couple things that, they did not like him.
Right. So, and that's fine. Like, obviously you trust him on that end, but you shouldn't just say, I'm not going to trade, Perlander Baroa for Ian Happ at the deadline, right? For 2 months of Ian Happ, because we think Baroa can help us for 6 years. No, you pull the trigger on that because Ian Happ could help you win a World Series this year.
Right.
So I think I like I said, I'm willing to give Jerry some benefit of the doubt over particularly the last 2 years, because it's a little too early to be going the rental route, blah, 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 whatever. Not this year. This year it's time to go. So if you get to July and there's a rental out there that really helps, and it's gonna cost you like a top 15, top 20 prospect for a couple months of that guy, I hope they pull the trigger on it. If they feel that guy helps them advance in the playoffs, they should pull the trigger on that. And so far they haven't done that. So I really hope that's not the case this year.
Well, and that kind of goes hand in hand with being more aggressive as a whole, as just like your philosophy, right? Because now it's go time. You've made the playoffs. You've ended the drought. Now it's about, I want to win a division. I want to go win the World Series. How do I make that happen? It's about, putting more emphasis on each individual game, especially division games, because division games are even more important now that you have fewer of them. And again, like you said, from an acquisition standpoint, it's about being more aggressive with your assets. So just overall, I want to see more urgency out of this team. I want to see that, that they're kind of on the cusp of this thing, and there's only a couple of things that they really need to do here to get where they want to go. And, so yeah.
I would just say, to be fair to them, they did win a literal sweepstakes for the best pitcher on the market just less than a year ago.
Yeah.
They went out and they paid the freight for Luis Castillo, and they beat everybody.
Right.
And they were very aggressive in their offer. So it's not like they won't do it. It's just that I would like to see them do it more, is essentially what I'm saying.
Yeah. But even with someone like Castillo, right? That's a year and a half of club control.
Yeah,
Obviously,
exactly.
you didn't know at the time if you were going to extend him or not. So yeah, you're essentially trading for just the year and a half of club control. But that's different than, like you said, 3 months of Brandon Drury or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that it's absolutely crucial that they're open to those possibilities, and those possibilities are going to be, right on their doorstep in July, as long as they're in a position to add at the deadline, which they should be, again, knock on wood. All right, we got a few more questions to go over here in just a moment, but real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, and you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year, and if you're like me where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then man, I've got just the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious you won't think they're good for you, which is perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they are all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy, only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank me later. All right, back into these final few questions we have here on Mailbag Monday. Daisy and the Dingo is back with another one. This time asking, do you think the Mariners and Teoscar Hernandez are still working on an extension, or are they prepping to go to arbitration hearings? It's been very quiet on that front as of late. So yeah, Teoscar, I believe, is the only Mariner left and that's arbitration eligible who's not agreed to a settlement yet. I would think, I mean, we do see these instances, especially with guys that just got acquired over the course of the offseason, where the arbitration here, the arbitration stuff kind of lingers on into spring training. But I would think, or at least hope, or maybe I'm coping here, that the reason for the delay on this is because they are trying to essentially buy out that arbitration year and add a couple years onto that via extension, at least. Yeah, it's an interesting situation that we got to keep an eye on here, because look, if there are some issues here, you just brought this guy in. If you have to go to an arbitration hearing, I'm not saying that damns your relationship with the player, but it's not a great start to your relationship with the player. So best case scenario here would be that they are working on an extension, and that's why they haven't agreed on the arbitration yet. And they're just trying to buy out that year. But anything else you want to add on this, Colby?
No. Once the arbitration hearing is scheduled, you get the answer in a couple days after, but we don't know if it's been scheduled. We don't know, and it probably got scheduled the day that they couldn't come to terms. So I think you're just kind of in a waiting game here. I really don't foresee an extension before we get an ARB hearing. So no, I think they're just kind of waiting for the process to play itself out. I'm not saying there's a 0% chance they extend Teo. I would just be really surprised if they did it before opening day.
Next question here comes from Teddy. Will the Mariners be putting their core in games early in spring training to get them reps before the World Baseball Classic, or will they hold them out a bit more for stamina with the WBC? I think it's the former. That they're going to try to get them more reps here, because I mean, those guys are going to go into the World Baseball Classic essentially being expected to play, at least 90% speed, if not full on speed, because these are games with stakes, and these guys, this is something that they really want to play for here. So yeah, I think, just to put them physically in the best position possible, it's a really difficult situation, because none of these guys are ramped up, and then they're expected to play at that kind of level, a couple weeks into spring training. It's ridiculous. So Yeah, I think you just try to get these guys reps and get them in as best baseball shape as possible before they head off.
Yeah, you're kind of in a tough spot though, because if you push them early in spring training, you might have some hamstring issues you might have, and then you kind of anger the player because now they're like, if Julio pulls a hammy or hurts his wrist or something in spring training, he is not playing for the Dominican.
No.
Like, that's not happening. He's done.
Mm-mm.
And so you kind of have to really be careful with the position players. The pitchers that the Mariners are sending, they're all relievers. They're only going to pitch an inning at a time, give or take. So I'm really not worried about them all that much. I maybe they get one or fewer inning at the start of spring training than they normally would, but particular guys like Festa and Brash, there's a high chance that they only pitch an inning for their country in the World Baseball Classic, maybe two. Maybe Brash or Canada or Italy advances, but that would be somewhat of a surprise. So yeah, I'm really not worried about the pitchers. It's Julio and it's Teo that I'm most worried about. How do you kind of manage them? I think with Teo, it's probably business as usual. He's a vet. He kind of understands how this thing is done. Julio's a great worker, but it's his first spring training where he knows he's on the team. It's just a little bit different, and he's got to kind of figure out a routine that works for him. So yeah, it's a little tough. You're in kind of a tough spot. I think it's mostly business as usual, but I think if you're going to err on the side of anything, for your position players, it's probably you guys kind of have to hit the ground running here, right? Like you have to be mid spring training shape by the time you get to spring training. Just because that's just the reality of the situation. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really good question. Somebody should ask Jerry about that.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen Teoscar and Julio working together, so maybe that's some of that is just the process of trying to get ahead of the game here. But yeah, it's such a difficult situation, especially if you're a team that's trying to make this work throughout this whole thing. It's just such an awkward time to have this thing. I just, there really isn't a perfect time to have a tournament like this really in baseball, because the off seasons are, or during the winter months and all this stuff. So it's really, it's just,
I think
it's annoying from being just a fan, just being a fan of the team. And like, you got like some of your star players are heading over into that thing. It's annoying. It's scary. Right. And for Mariners fans in particular too, we're scarred from the whole soggy arm, Drew Smiley situation. So it's just,
that. And if Julio gets hurt in this thing, you're screwed.
Yeah.
like game set. Like if he, God forbid, pulls a hammy or tears a hammy and he's out like 8 weeks, like Taylor Trammell or something like that, you're screwed. Like your season might be over before it even starts. So yeah, it's terrifying. So, I hope Julio has a good tournament, but I would be very happy if somehow the Dominican went 0-2 and they were done. Like, no offense to Julio and Teo, and I'm happy they're playing for their country, but I'd rather you play for the Mariners.
Yeah. All right. Last question of the day comes from Jason. The biggest question you hope will be answered during spring training.
Trick question. No questions will be answered during spring training because it's spring training. Literally nothing will get answered. Nothing. If Jared Kelenic goes out there and hits 800, are you just all of a sudden filled with, he's an all-star now?
No, I don't care what Jared Kelenic does in terms of the numbers, but I do care if Jared Kelenic comes into spring and is looking a little bit more trim and has made some mechanical tweaks that seems to lead to a more fluid swing. That is something that I'm keeping an eye on. That's a question that I'm hoping to see answered. Yes.
Swing analyzer Ty Dane Gonzalez here. He's going to notice all the little differences.
That's right.
Differences.
I am.
The only objective I have for spring training.
Let me revise that. I am hoping that he comes in there with some mechanical changes that someone else who's way smarter than I will identify and then tweet about on Twitter.
Like, you're just hoping to see that Joe Doyle tweet like, oh, look at what Kelenic did here. He's the bat's staying in the zone longer. You're like, I'm gonna be like, I totally saw that. Yep. Joe and I were like this.
Yeah, exactly. Mind meld.
Yeah. The only thing I care about in spring training is that everybody is healthy, as healthy as possible going into the regular season. Statistically, nothing is going to happen that changes my mind. Honestly, I'm hoping that Dylan Moore and Sam Haggerty get in some games because it sounds like their availability for opening day is at least questionable at this point. So yeah, for me, it's just about health. Obviously, you would prefer a guy like Kelnick go out there and hit like 375 and hit like 6 home runs in spring. That'd be great, but ultimately, that really doesn't matter. So it's kind of a trick question. I don't think there's going to be any questions that are answered. Maybe some fun ones like, hey, Evan White does look healthy, maybe something like that. But
Sure.
in terms of just, is there anything that's going to happen on the field that's going to make me change my roster projections or anything like that?
Yeah.
Probably not.
There isn't a Julio situation this year.
No.
Like last year, there was actually like some questions that were answered in the spring, like, oh wow, Julio can actually play center field, and wow,
Right.
Julio is forcing the Mariners' hand right now.
That doesn't exist because it's Bryce Miller's not going to do that.
Right. Cade Marlowe's probably not going to do that. Like,
no.
Yeah. Maybe Taylor Jamel.
Maybe, but it's not really a swing thing with Jamel. So
yeah,
I don't know. We'll see. I say that now, but then like on March like 19th or something, I'm going to come on the show and be like, boy, I tell you, it's going to be awfully hard for the Mariners not to put Cade Marlowe on the team based on what he's doing out there. So yeah, I say that now, but we'll see what happens, in a couple weeks.
Yeah, we're still in that stage where we're very ignorant of what's to come potentially.
I think it's more like we haven't like been excited by like watching baseball, just any baseball in general. And so we're like, oh yeah, nothing can happen. But then we see Bryce Miller go out there and go like 4 innings against the Dodgers, like a lineup and go 4 scoreless. And we're like, did you see him strike out Mookie Betts?
Yeah, the brain hasn't been simulated. The dopamine, it's not here just yet. But then, Bryce Miller goes out there, strikes out 12 in a row against the Dodgers, and it's like, no, this guy actually should start on opening day.
Yeah. So we'll see.
He actually is Spencer Strider. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's CANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Now make your second listen. Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby as a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.